So I've never been one to think of this subreddit as a place for advice, but I've also never had a story to share myself. I'm very scared. About a month ago, I ordered a birthday gift for my roommate and received a notification that it had arrived. Well, it hadn't. My apartment has a letter in its designation, but the building behind me doesn't. If you put that address into a GPS, it'll direct you to the building behind me and drop the letter. Amazon is great, and the third-party shipping company they use is not so much. Last time, my package ended up there. I thought it might have been the same this time, so I went out looking for it. I was wearing my older glasses, some pajama shorts, and flip-flops. I looked ridiculous at 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, but not enough to excuse what happened. I looked at the door that shares my apartment number, but it looked like no one lived there, so I knocked on the adjacent one. No one answered, and I knocked one more time, figuring he probably wasn't even home. He answered wearing only a pair of boxers. He asked me curtly, "Yeah?" I asked if there had been a package earlier, and if he might have accidentally taken it inside. I stupidly explained the apartment problem, and happened to drop my apartment number in the conversation. No. I apologized for bothering him and left quickly. I went back home to explain to my roommate why his package was lost in the mail, and there was a very loud knock at my door. For some reason, I assumed it was likely a disgruntled delivery man. I'd been on and off the phone the entire time, so I opened my door without the chain lock. As you can expect, he was standing on the other side, dressed in a shitty tank top and basketball shorts. He looked me square in the eye and said, "Hey, don't you ever knock on my door again, you hear me? Don't ever do it again in your life. What's your name?" Before I could give a pseudonym, he continued, "Don't ever knock on it again." I pleaded and panicked and promised to never do it again, completely in shock. My roommate had heard the entire thing but didn't see him. Multiple neighbors also directly witnessed the entire altercation. I didn't call the police because he hadn't done anything, and I was afraid he would target me. The next day, his neighbor, the door I hadn't knocked on, delivered my package and apologized for the mix-up. It was Mother's Day, so my mom was visiting and I was at work. After all that, I began seeing him at my workplace. It's a public service area, so he's freely available to come and go as he pleases. The trouble is, I don't know if I simply started only noticing him after the incident, but he's pretty distinctive and aloof. I'm fairly certain I would have noticed him before. He just walks in with his earbuds in. Occasionally, he does something on his computer for a bit. He's there almost from open to close every day. It's a library, so again, I suppose this is normal. We cross paths almost every one of these days, too. I dress more formally at work and wear nicer glasses. Up until recently, I wasn't even sure he recognized me, and thought maybe I was worrying about nothing and I'd simply pissed off an ineffectual dickhead. Then tonight happened. I was on the phone with a friend at about 9 p.m., walking down a road I often walk when I take walks. Usually earlier in the day, but I felt safe taking my trash to the dumpster almost the same distance away at 2 a.m., perhaps naively. I spotted him alone on the basketball court, and he clearly saw me too. I tried to pretend not to notice, but kept him in my peripheral vision. I kept walking as if nothing was wrong, because up until now he'd done nothing but be an asshole since the first incident. But I could see he was leaving the court in a direction to head me off. While he was behind some bushes, I turned around. He continued to follow me, and I simply stayed on the phone with my friend as if nothing was wrong. It's times like these that I regret not coming up with those safe word phrases to alert people when I get paranoid. He quickened his pace, and so did I. Eventually he was too close to keep that up, so I turned around and asked him if he had a problem with me. "Didn't you knock on my door?" was the only response I got. I meekly responded yes, unsure of how else to approach the situation. Then he said, "So what are you doing here?" We were outside the local community center. Our apartment complexes are adjacent to it. We're probably both going the same distance. He repeated this several times and continued to approach me. I could see from his stance that he was going to lunge and attack, and fight or flight kicked in. This man is a foot taller than me and was shirtless with some clearly maintained pectorals. I chose flight. I'm not sure if he was half-assing the chase or if adrenaline kicked in, but I somehow managed to keep out of his reach. He threw his basketball at me during the chase and grabbed for me several times. Finally, he stopped to catch his breath, and I kept on running. I stopped running inside of my house, thinking he'd given up, and went inside. I locked the door and called 911 immediately. While on the phone, he began to bang loudly on my door like the first time. This went on intermittently for about 10 minutes. Apparently in that time, 2 different neighbors saw him and one verbally argued with him and told him to leave. When the police showed up, I explained everything above and described him. They found him behind my building, unclear how close to his unit he was, and spoke with him. According to the officer that went to check on that side of things, he thinks I'm stalking him and stealing his packages. He also told this to my neighbor. I have no self-defense weapons at the moment and don't feel safe. Can't even go to work for respite. They can remove him from the library permanently, but I'm almost afraid to do that because it will only make him angrier and leave him wandering around here more often instead. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure when I can feel comfortable leaving my apartment, to say nothing of the fact that I don't feel safe here either. According to the police, this only counts as simple assault, a misdemeanor. I can go to the magistrate tomorrow to get a warrant for his arrest, but that's not going to be for any real length of time. They can't arrest him now, as they didn't catch him in the act or at my door. But my neighbors are concerned for their own safety as well. I hope you can enjoy this story, as I've always morbidly wanted to share one, but I'm no longer happy I get the chance. If you have any advice, I'd be very happy to hear any of it. This happened a few years ago when I had just moved to a new city, age 20, female, working and going to school full-time. I had a hard time meeting guys my age, so I turned to online dating in hopes of meeting the one. I chose Plenty of Fish, thinking it somehow wasn't like the other dating sites, and this is where I met Anthony. He messaged me first and there were a few red flags, but I was desperate to talk to someone off Plenty of Fish that wasn't just trying to hook up or score nudes. I noticed all of his pictures were of random pro skateboarders and Nick Cave. Naive, I continued to chat with him because he seemed pretty harmless. I couldn't quite point out what gave me a weird feeling, but it all started off innocent enough, and I thought he was just maybe a little bit weird or quirky. A few random and weird messages on Plenty of Fish, some song lyrics, long word vomit type soliloquies, compliments on my red hair. Again, naive, I gave him a link to my personal blog on Tumblr in hopes of having some common interests. Anthony made a Tumblr account that night and went through every single one of my posts, liking each one, going all the way back through years of content. I must have had 500 likes by him by the next morning. Some time passed. I was no longer interested in pursuing Anthony, mostly due to the fact that all of our conversations were one-sided and just random or bizarre. Every once in a while, he would send me a random message on Tumblr about clouds, his clothes, some more unrelated lyrics, his love of foxes. He actually asked me to go on a date with him, but I told him that by this time I had a boyfriend. By this time I had been dating my boyfriend for 6 months. Anthony still continued to like my posts on Tumblr, was reblogging a lot of art, animals, and various interests. He posted one selfie of his face. He looked to be about my age, with messy long brown hair and a beard. I was grateful we had drifted apart, and simply deleted and ignored any messages he sent me from his account. One day I received a message on Tumblr from a girl named Tandy. She said she had recently moved to the city and was looking to make some friends. She had been following me a while and thought we had a lot in common. I looked at her Tumblr, and she had quite a bit of content dating back several months. All of her posts related to my own interests, and I thought I had met my new best friend. We began chatting for hours, bonding over various things and exchanging experiences. She loved all the same music and seemed like such a cool person. Being new to the city, I still hadn't made many friends and was eager to perhaps start an offline friendship with Tandy. I invited her to my boyfriend's show. I figured it was public and safe. I would be surrounded by people, and I had now added her on Facebook, saw what she looked like, and felt comfortable with her. She didn't have many friends or updates on her page, but I attributed that to the fact that she said she was new to the city, a homebody introvert type, and was putting in long hours at a local radio station she worked at. Innocent, naive me believed everything. I was so excited to have made a new friend. We had even exchanged numbers and texted daily. I know that the person I was talking to that whole time was indeed Tandy. After chatting for a month, the day finally came. It was my boyfriend's show, and I was going to meet up with her. The doors had just opened, so there wasn't many people at the venue yet, but I recognized her right away sitting at a table. I noticed she wasn't sitting alone. She was sitting with a guy in a toque, with his face shrouded with hair and a beard. My heart literally stopped, because I realized she was sitting with Anthony. My boyfriend was setting up his gear. None of my friends had arrived yet, and no one knew at this point about Anthony. Only my boyfriend was aware that I was meeting Tandy at the show. She smiled at me and said hello. She hugged me. Anthony was silent. He stared at me as I awkwardly waved to him. "Hey, Anthony. I guess we finally meet." Anthony smiled and nodded his head, but didn't say a word. Tandy quickly interrupted, saying, "Anthony told me you guys met on Tumblr too. Small world. He's actually my boyfriend." Somehow I couldn't believe the coincidence, but regardless, spent the night with them, chatting with Tandy and being stared at by Anthony. He literally didn't say a single word to me the entire night. My boyfriend had no reason to think anything was going on, and for some reason I was super embarrassed about the situation, so I didn't tell my boyfriend about Anthony that night. Later, I texted Tandy to inquire about her relationship with Anthony, but I didn't get a reply. I called her 3 times, but suddenly her phone number was out of service. I went online, only to see that her Tumblr was now deleted. I went on Facebook. Her account was there, but no longer being updated for the week that I had watched it. She didn't respond to any of my messages. I went onto a personal website for the radio station she apparently worked at, and she wasn't listed anywhere as a personnel or volunteer. I later met a friend who worked at this radio station, and she confirmed there was never anyone named Tandy who ever stepped foot into the station, or did any of the stuff she claimed to be doing. She effectively disappeared off the face of the earth. I went onto Anthony's Tumblr page, and he was still posting art, music, and foxes. I decided to creep into a bit what he was liking on Tumblr, and all of his likes were of red-headed women in various stages of bondage, abuse, Kate Winslet in Titanic, Scully from the X-Files, fanfiction about kidnappings and enslavement, red-haired women dressed as foxes in cages. I still thought I had some control over the situation. In fact, nothing happened for a while after that. Not until a month went by, and I was at the art gallery with some friends. I was going through the exhibits when my heart stopped. Anthony was there too. He followed us through them for a while, then disappeared out of sight. I couldn't figure out how he knew I was at the art gallery on that day. I saw him at a few other events too that I could not understand his connection to. No one knew who he was. He always just lingered in the background for a bit and disappeared. I saw him at a bunch of other shows too, a smaller party at my friend's gallery, and a pop-up shop downtown for my friend's business. My boyfriend had another show a few months later. The band was loading in gear, and the bar was empty. Doors had just opened maybe 5 minutes ago, and I was waiting for sound check. I look at the bar and my heart drops again. In full construction uniform, Anthony is at the bar holding his hard hat. He's still wearing his work vest and still in boots. By now I'm freaking out, and I actually ran into the bathroom to think of what I needed to do. The woman at the bar saw me run into the bathroom and came to check up on me. I asked her about the man in the construction uniform at the bar, and she told me he was very weird. He had arrived an hour before doors had opened and stood outside waiting to come in. He didn't order a drink, he just appeared to be waiting. I asked this woman to get my boyfriend, who was just finishing sound check at this point. I told my boyfriend everything I knew about Anthony. Of course he went to Anthony like a bat out of hell and interrogated him at the bar. Anthony had no expression, as my boyfriend told him to get lost and that he never wanted to see him again. Anthony took his hard hat and backpack and left. When the show finally started, I began to relax. My friends were there and I felt a little more protected. But I looked beside me, and you guessed it. Anthony had changed into regular clothes and was standing right beside me, just staring at me. I ended up hiding in the green room the entire show and left early with my boyfriend. We couldn't find Anthony anywhere after that. My boyfriend asked how Anthony was finding out my whereabouts, especially considering the art gallery trip was only talked about on a Facebook group event. I told him I had never added Anthony on Facebook. My profile security settings were the highest possible. My boyfriend asked if I still had Tandy as a friend on Facebook, and I said yes. It was then that I realized that Anthony was stalking me through her Facebook account, and I needed to block and delete her. It took a lot to accept that Tandy had not been real, had pretended to be my friend, was perhaps even paid by Anthony to gain my trust. That was hard to swallow. I blocked and deleted Tandy, and I never saw Anthony at an event ever again. Then my boyfriend started getting strange friend requests on Facebook. One was from a fan of his band who lived in Ontario. My boyfriend was initially stoked and had no issue talking to this fan about his music and possibly making it out to Ontario for a show. But as the conversation went on, he started to get a bad feeling. More and more, this fan asked my boyfriend about his rose, which was what the fan referred to me as. The fan asked my boyfriend if he would bring his rose to the next show. My boyfriend got wise to this and blocked the fan immediately. He didn't tell me about this until a few months later. I happened to be on my boyfriend's computer one day and noticed him in a Facebook conversation with a girl named Lynn. She was beautiful, blonde, thin, listed as a model and living in a city 3 hours away. I couldn't help myself as the messages started to pile up while I was checking my email. I read my boyfriend's conversation with Lynn, and my heart sank. Initially, I thought he was having an affair with her. Lynn was using such sweet language, sending pictures, asking him to meet up, and asking if your Rose would be mad if she found out. I was shaking when I called my boyfriend down and asked him to straight up tell me who the hell was Lynn. My boyfriend said it was Anthony. I didn't believe him until my boyfriend told me about the fan, showed me all the messages, pointed out the location where all these messages were coming from, in the same city we lived in. Anthony didn't realize that at the end of every message it said, "Sent from our location," not Ontario, not the nearby city, yet the profiles listed a different city entirely. Lynn had hundreds of friends, all of whom ended up being bots from Thailand and India. Lynn used the same style and language as the fan, and I noticed Anthony himself. I ended up creeping Anthony on Facebook and finding out all the information and pictures he was using of Lynn were actually from one of his mutual friends on Facebook. I found her actual legit profile and everything. Me and my boyfriend blocked and deleted all the accounts. I gave up my blog that I spent over 5 years cultivating and gaining 5K followers. Anthony went as far as to find a few listings that my boyfriend had made on Kijiji for various things. Anthony actually contacted my boyfriend and set up a meeting to buy some tools. All was set to go. My boyfriend was going to meet him, until the potential buyer called my boyfriend to ask if he could meet us at home. He declined. The potential buyer then asked, "Will your rose be with you?" My boyfriend hung up and deleted all of his ads. Anthony must have found them by searching my boyfriend's email. By now I'm terrified and have gone to the police, but unless Anthony physically harms or threatens me, nothing can be done. We lived like this for another year, so by now I've been stalked by Anthony for 2 years. Eventually all the weird stuff just stopped, and I never heard from him again. His Tumblr is still active. He still posts foxes and likes and follows a very particular kink scene with redheads. I haven't seen or heard from him for several years now. My boyfriend is the only one who's ever actually heard his voice. This happened 8 years ago. My family, mom, dad, and 2 younger brothers, lives in a very large suburban neighborhood in North Carolina with many other families. It's typically a safe neighborhood, with not much happening in it besides the rambunctious kids that run between the yards of houses, ding-dong ditching the neighbors and the like. Common suburb activity. Me, being in 6th grade at the time, was a part of this group of kids, and my brothers as well as our friends who lived in the neighborhood would usually run into the woods to play tag or head into the large field that was in the middle of the neighborhood. Our summer days were spent going in and out of each other's houses, pretending to camp out in the woods and running around the grassy field. However, I guess the neighborhood wasn't as safe as it appeared to be. One of our neighbors sent an email to other families in our development, saying that a compact dark blue car was going in circles around their neighborhood, at times stopping completely or moving slowly down the street staring at houses. All the families in our neighborhood are very close, and we all know each other well. Nobody knew whose car this was. The email continued, saying that an older woman with blonde hair had been spotted driving the car. We were just told to be on the lookout and let anybody know if we saw any suspicious behavior. This email led to all the parents giving kids the stranger danger talk. If we saw the woman with the blue car, or if she tried to talk to us, we were to run to a neighbor's house. Though this kind of put us on edge, we weren't too worried, and we continued spending every day playing outside. We never thought that we would actually see her car. But then one day we did. It was another late summer afternoon. My 2 brothers, a couple neighborhood kids, and I were walking down the street towards the grassy field. Since the field sits on the edge of the main road, there's a line of elevated bushes, trees, and other plants that separate the two. We began playing tag as normal. We ran from one end of the field to the other, think the distance of a football field, and played with a soccer ball. We sit down in the middle of the field, tired from playing, and lie down on the grass. From where we were sitting, we could see the entrance to the neighborhood as it sat at one end of the field. On the opposite end of the field was another entrance, meaning a car could go in or out at both ends. Almost immediately following us sitting down, the dark blue car speeds in the neighborhood. Us being so young, we began to panic, probably just at the sheer thought of potentially being kidnapped. And the car began slowly moving towards where we were sitting, and me being the oldest, I told everyone to run into the bushes and trees at the edge of the field to hide. We kind of just forgot about running to a neighbor's house. I remember this moment being so intense, the 6 of us just sprinting towards the bushes as the car got closer to us. We all literally leaped into the bush and immediately lied down on the ground to conceal ourselves. We were dead silent. In retrospect, this wouldn't help us much. She already knew where we were. And we were all panting heavily. We could see the car from where we were sitting, and the woman had stopped in front of the field. She had rolled down her window and was looking almost directly at us to where we had run. She began driving again, heading towards the exit of our neighborhood. We all relaxed, knowing that she was leaving at last. But we were wrong. She left the neighborhood, only to re-enter from the opposite side. She was circling the field slowly, leaving us trapped in the middle. She went around the field maybe 10 times, doing circles and staring towards us with her window rolled down. We had no idea what she was planning or trying to do. We were all terrified. We were actually trapped in the field, and none of us had cell phones at this time. Not sure how long we were there for, just waiting for her to leave. My youngest brother even began crying. At one point, she called out to us from our window, asking why we were trying to hide from her. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever heard, and it sent actual shivers up my spine. We knew we had to deviate a plan to get out, or else she would just continue to circle us. There was about 15 seconds in between her exiting and re-entering the neighborhood, and we knew that was all the time we had to run out of there. As soon as she exited the next time, we sprinted from the bushes and took off towards my house, which was a few houses down from the field. It hurt a lot running that fast, panting and being terrified of what would happen to us. The 6 of us threw ourselves up my front steps and whipped open the door, just as the woman was re-entering the neighborhood. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I'm not sure if she saw us entering the house or if she thought we were in the bushes still. I can't remember if we told our parents or not either. We ended up forgetting about the woman in the dark blue car, and I still have no idea what she was doing circling us or what she was planning to do. Ever since, she basically disappeared from the neighborhood. Hey everyone, hope you're having a nice day. This encounter took place about 1.5 years ago, but I still kinda want to share it. It was a nice October evening. I was still in my senior year of high school, 16 and female. I was attending some evening English classes at the time. I'm from a non-English speaking country, but I decided to skip since I was kind of worn out from all the studying. Instead, I went to my favorite half-library, half-shop establishment in a mall. I actually went there on purpose to buy a Hunter Thompson's book, since I was and still am a huge fan of his works. However, once I came there, I noticed they had a concert evening, and some small hippie band was singing just near the shelves I needed to go to. This library is a 2-story establishment, with the second floor being really small and almost like a balcony. Basically, it was a big square first floor, and the second floor was as if this square was cut from the inside. Sorry, I can't really explain it well. The point is, you could see the whole library from any spot. There weren't any separate rooms. I just get to the second floor and browse the biography and memoir shelves, thinking how I could get to my desired book. No one was even sitting near the band, so I anticipated that it wasn't allowed getting near them. There were a couple more people near me, but I didn't pay them any mind. Suddenly, a man came up behind me and said, "Excuse me, can I look at these books?" Being that I wasn't really interested in any of these and looked through them just to kill some time, I immediately replied by saying something along the lines of, "Yes, of course," and shifted slightly to the right. When the man was directly near me, I could get a good look at him. The very first thing I thought upon checking him out was that he looked very much like Mads Mikkelsen, maybe a slightly uglier version of him. He was well dressed, looked normal and presentable. I didn't think anything of him, but then he started talking to me, asking something like, "Hey, what are you up to? Why are you here?" I was a little shocked since this man was obviously a lot older than me, and I've always looked my age, maybe even a little younger, but I went along replying something along the lines of, "Yeah, I'm here to get this book, but there's a band there and I don't know if I can get to it." He asked for my name, and I was smart enough to give him a fake one. Then he starts eagerly talking about the author, gonzo journalism, and from his body language I immediately understood what he was up to. My mother is a psychologist, so she taught me a lot of things about people and whatnot, so I picked up on his intentions very fast. This man was clearly after me. We made a bit of small talk. I was obviously uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to get out of this situation. He was talking non-stop, trying to cling on to me, and when at one point my phone buzzed, it just caught Wi-Fi. I thought someone was calling me and turned around. He asked if he was bothering me. Being a little polite self, I said no with a little fake laugh. I should have just brushed him off, really. Then came a really disturbing point when he asked for my age. I cheerily replied that I was 16, which was true, by the way, thinking that it would scare him away. But no, he didn't care that I was a minor. He happily replied that he was 46. It got even more creepy for me when he offered me a chat over coffee. I said, "But I'm just 16. I can't really hang out around older men." To this, he replied something I remember very well, with a serious expression. "You're already 16. That's old enough. You're also just so sexy. That's why I approached you." At this point, I was hysterical on the inside. I knew somewhere deep down that this guy couldn't really try anything in a fairly crowded shop, but it was still scary not knowing what he would do. I immediately went into a little dining lobby in the corner of the library, trying to brainstorm any strategies to retreat. Maybe it was a dumb idea, but I decided to say, "Oh, I actually have a dance class soon. I'll be late if I don't go now, so I'll get the book and I'll be going." He took it well and waited for me. I went straight for the book. I didn't even care about the band anymore. While I was at the counter paying for it, I really hoped I could slip away, but this man waited just behind me and called for me right when I was about to book it out of the door. He started drilling me about my dance classes, what style I was learning, where the dance studio was at. I tried to give the most vague answers I could, so he just dropped it and came straight to the point. Scheduling a date. He kept rambling about this new bubble tea place, visibly desperate to try and drag me into this. I just replied that it wasn't a very good idea, and when he asked, "When then?" I just threw a never at him and speed walked away. He mumbled an, "Oh, okay then," and seemed to give up. Needless to say, the ending's not very creepy and it's kind of anticlimactic, but I was pretty shaken that evening. I don't even know why. I've always been catcalled a lot and hit on by older men, but this particular encounter was pretty unnerving, even though I don't think anything of it now. Every time I look at that book, I remember this man, and I hope we never meet again. Oh yeah, and one last thing. I learned a valuable lesson from this. Fuck politeness. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I have a little bit of an update here for you guys. I've recently started streaming a little bit on Twitch. I don't know if you guys are interested in just hanging out and seeing a bit of gameplay of maybe Monster Hunter or some games like that, maybe a few horror games, but I'll leave a link to my Twitch in the description of the video below. As always, if you guys like the video, please leave a comment or perhaps like or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you'd like to message me, or you'd like to send in a story for me to read, or you have a suggestion for a story I should read, the links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below as well. This includes my Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and now, of course, my Twitch account. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But please, guys, be patient, because I do get a lot of messages, so if I don't respond to you right away within like a week or two, just be a little patient. I'll get to it as soon as I can. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the description of the email or message what the name of the story is, what the category of the story is, and how you would like to be credited in the video that the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, links to the music and the order in which the music appears will always be in the description below the video, so you can go ahead and check that out there. Last but not least, if you guys do enjoy my content, please take a look at my Patreon, and if you feel so inclined, maybe donate like $1 or something. Every little bit helps. It'll never be necessary, but of course, it's always an option if you guys would like to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.